Hello everyone, today is 25th of December 2022 and I'm continuing my video Daily Reality with Alex. I'm here in Austria today. We are celebrating Christmas and I would like to continue the series based on the perspective of reality, of why we are in a necessity to have this savior archetype. And I know a lot of us are asking all the time our questions, Alex, what we are to be saved from. And for me, of course, the biggest thing that we as the human beings are in necessity to be saved from is actually the ego. This is everything that I have explored and found about Jesus Christ from the moment of his birth till the end, is that nobody can show me the places where we can see his ego in the sense that he was able to express something else but the will of the Father. And it is very important, of course, to understand actually why ego and the unleash of the ego, in the sense that ego appears only when a human being is out of order and decides to use his willpower of choice, in a sense that it is independent from everything else in reality and can work in reality without being under order. We, all of us, are created to love ourselves, to love the freedom, to love the power of choice, but we never ask ourselves the more fundamental question even than the power of choice. And this fundamental question is called what we are choosing. Why there are options in reality created for us to choose from. Before there is a chooser, there should be a reality where there are options, where we are living in reality of probability, where there are things that we are to be able to collapse. And then the big question is why we actually are deciding to be alone in our choices and to never work in alignment and collaboration with reality and to interact with reality through our connection and in alignment with everything. I know a lot of us are going to say, well, it is 100% opposite. All of us are just willing the same thing. The only thing we want is our limitless being to be always secure, to be always observed, and we are willing to be always aware of ourselves, because only then we know that we are. Let's go now back to the beginning and why all conflicts in reality are existing. And we can move back and go to the first transgressor and even to the first sinner, according to all the stories that all of us have heard. And of course, it is not the man, it is not the being that was created to be in the image of God, but even before it, we have the devil, the Satan, the opposer, and so on. A lot of different ways it is described. And the only thing we can say is that this is the first being that decided to go out of order and to be its own God, or to express its reality in a way without subordination and without being in 100% alignment with what is. And based on this, he embraced the archetype of the opposer, and he 100% embraced the power of the resistance of the order. Yes, all of us know that if there is an order of reality, there is going to be 100% an option of disobedience and disalignment and disengagement. And the human beings, we are strongly willing to not go back to order, and we are giving everything possible in order to have our freedom and to feel the power of choice, in the sense that we are doing it alone without any influence, and that, of course, if choice is an illusion, how can we say that we are free beings? But if we move forward into the situation that everything in reality is actually a data stream that is coming before us, and we can never choose something else than what is in our data stream, then of course we are probability beings, we are wave collapsing beings, we can say whatever we want about us, but we are still, through the data stream, put in the limitations of probabilities. And there is a big paradox that more and more we as human beings are approaching the end, and more of the options are already used. More and more we are coming to less and less options and less probabilities. And of course there are always new probabilities arising before us, but because of every probability and every choice, there is something that is changing in humanity, because based on every choice we are evolving. And that's why we are in this situation of loop and of cycles. And this is where I enjoy, and I'm so grateful that the Christ figure is actually existing, and that there is the possibility for this reconciliation archetype to exist, and to actually there to be a force that is possible to bring everything little by little back in order, to such an extent that every being that decides to align, that decides to move back to order, and paradoxically that decides not to follow the ego and its own self, in the sense that I am, the I amness is able to alone rule in reality, that this so-called I amness of all of us is able to alone and disconnected from source to create a reality objectively that is in favor also for others. Is it possible at all? Because I personally have experienced, and I know how strong and how big is my ego and my limitless being, to such an extent that for the first time in my life I actually maybe experienced the fear of God, but in totally other way than I thought till then, because I knew that all of us we need to respect and to have fear of an existence of creator. For the first time in my life, maybe almost 1 month ago, I realized the necessity of this fear to exist. I know a lot of us are thinking that fears is something that we are constantly to reject, that we are not to embrace fears, that we are not to understand the deepness of why fear is also there for us, and we are misled and we are misguided, and we don't know exactly how to embrace and how to rule and how to know even our deepest shadow self. And as someone was explaining, that more and more we as human beings are opening ourselves towards shining through more and more connection, actually we start casting bigger shadows, not only on the objective reality, where people are starting to see even more darkness, even more raw reality, but also when we go through the reflection of the reality and see ourselves and the inside of us, it's much more easier to accept, to see, and to observe more of our shadow self also, and not to be afraid of it. So when I was observing my strong, limitless being and how capable in reality it is, what I realized is that actually, if there is not an out of reality governing everything being, I was not able to exist. And if there is not an outside conscious intelligent being that is long-term involved into ruling and governing this reality, it's not possible for us limitless beings to exist without extinguishing each other. Because for the first time in my life, I felt my limitless being, how if I'm let go, if reality is allowing me, I'm going to absorb everything. My limitless being and my ego is willing to experience everything, is willing to feel everything, is willing to be everything, is willing to feel all the space if it's allowed. Isn't this life actually about fulfillment? Don't we want to fill all the gaps that we got aware of in our inner being and in the outer reality? Are we not in the chasing game of competition about who is more? And it is so funny because all of us are limitless beings, so there is no possibility for comparison between all of us, and the only thing we are actually to focus upon how we are ruling our limitless beings in the limitation of reality, and how much we are possible to actually long-term be in alignment with the governor of the reality. And of course, personally, I'm more and more moving into understanding that the story of a savior who was and is able to never show its ego at the expense of being able to help us as human beings to dissolve our ego into embracing more and more his archetype. And that's why, anyhow, because of the identity structure created in every one of us, we cannot experience or have awareness, even if we don't embrace at least one identity, because in order to even get awareness, we need to compare. And what are we comparing with if we are just an I amness without any identity? How can we be aware of something? And since we consciously or subconsciously we are embracing archetypes, and there are different probabilities of archetypes we can embrace through which to experience reality and to gather awareness, I'm so lucky and glad that I was able to embrace and to explore this archetype of this transmuting power of the unconditional love, where a being is able to be so selfless that even it can transmute all the egoism of every being that have ever existed, is existing, or is going to be existing in himself, and is able to experience all other probabilities and to identify with everything that no being is or is going to be ever willing by his conscious selfishness to identify with. Because usually when we identify with something, we do it in order to enhance or to increase or to magnify who we are. And when we answer our questions of who we are, it is very interesting because actually most of the times we are answering this question by our identifications. If I ask myself who I am, I'm going to tell you about my doingness. I'm a business person, I have children, I have hobbies, and I'm starting to describing my expressions. But if you ask me deeply who I am, I'm just an empty vessel, and it is for all of us. We are just emptiness that is deciding and willing to be filled with all type of different subconscious archetypes and identifications that are out there. But of course, the long term, we have a very strong power, and this is the power of being able to go back out of the ego and the selfish expressions of ourselves into the reality, back to the order, and to becoming and enjoying to be selfless beings that are able to be servants of all, beings that are willing and enjoying to dedicate their personal experience to the expansion of the experience of others, and more of us which are understanding and are embracing the Savior's archetype are of course going to express a life of support and raising the significance of others, and a life where we are existing in order to support all life and all existence. So the end game is we as human beings to be transformed and transmuted from beings that are consumers and life takers and are just experiencing the so-called living beings, beings that are enjoying existence, into, of course it takes a lot of energy, time, and so on and so on, but long term we are to be transformed in all areas of our being into life-giving spirits. We become and identify with life in a sense that we become part of the source, part of giving instead of consumption, and instead of just thinking about receiving. So this is a very wonderful celebration period where we can speak and talk and have our mental awareness upon so many fundamental things. And the wonderful thing is that more and more we dwell in the fundamentals, actually more and more we are becoming aligned, and more we are able to be much faster positioning ourselves into our meaning and purpose, because we are escaping only to move forward into the details, and we are escaping a lot of vortexes that are existing there in order we not to see and not to grasp the fundamentals and the basics of reality from where everything else happens, and it is there for us. So thank you for watching today, and I was just willing to share more about why we are not able alone to experience the transformation that all of us are anyhow in necessity to go through, and there is a direction towards which we are going. So of course I know it's hard, but all of us have a choice. We are here to choose, and the problem, one of the identification problems, is that we are also to choose fundamental archetypes through which we are to identify and to experience life. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your reality, observe, explore, and have nice celebrations. Bye bye.